Ben Riggs presents D&D Out Loud. Episode 86, The Wild 90s in TTRPGs.
Welcome once again to D&D Out Loud with Ben Riggs. I am Ben Riggs, apparently controversial D&D historian and author of Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons and Dragons. And over the past 13 years of writing and podcasting, I have met hundreds of creative geniuses in and around the world of tabletop role-playing games. Here on this show, I ask a few of these flaming torches of the human imagination to come on and have a fascinating discussion, which I then record and send out into the world. First up today is the one, the only Wolfgang Baur, a creator and business person whose fingerprints are all over the hobby. He can write fantasy like Tolkien and run a business like someone who's geeky and good at running a business and not at all ethically challenged in this year of 2020. He's the creator of the MIDGARD campaign setting and the founder of Kobold Press. Welcome, Wolfgang Baur.
Oh, I am so happy to be here. Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. My other guest today is Phil Brucato, a name that radiates pure 90s occult shelf energy.
Oh my God.
In the best way. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It is. Yes.
Phil is a designer who helped define an era, Mage the Ascension, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Wraith the Oblivion, games that didn't just ask, what do you do, but what do you believe, and what does it cost you? Phil's work sits right at the crossroads of myth, philosophy, and punk rock metaphysics. Phil Brucato, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. And Wolfgang, I've got some of your books right behind us.
Oh my goodness. How did that happen? My bookshelf is diagonal to the camera. I feel like I made a staging mistake, but yeah, Mage is still on the shelf. So yes.
I mean, where to begin with the two of you, but I guess I'll ask, I'll tell the story I often tell, which is, I talked to Phil and I was like, hey, Phil, who would you want to talk to? And he mentioned you, Wolfgang. And so Phil, let me ask you, why Wolfgang? And should I have introduced you as Satyros? I'm sorry.
Satyros works. I've been going by Stater for about 25 years. Satyros Phil Brucato is my professional name because I just never liked Phil. I would have changed my name 30 something years ago if I'd come up with a better name. I was nicknamed Satyr at White Wolf by Ian Lemke, and then it got picked up by Nikki Ray and Jackie Cassada.
Oh, and
it
stuck.
And it stuck.
It seems appropriate.
Thank you. Wolfgang and I met, if I recall correctly, in a hearse coming back from a White Wolf party, or going from a White Wolf party at DragonCon 1993.
Yes, this was the era when I was working at TSR on Dragon Magazine, and you and the White Wolf gang were throwing the most amazing parties in Atlanta at DragonCon. And I still don't know how I got talked into it, but somebody said, you want to come to the White Wolf party? And I said, yeah, those are the cool kids. I'm pretty sure I'm too square for that. And they're like, no, we can get you in. And I wound up in a hearse with you and a bunch of other people. And I'm like, how did I get here? And what I remember about this party is, it was so great. It was a wonderful White Wolf party with loud music. And maybe there was a drum circle and maybe there wasn't, but it was people letting their freak flags fly in a warehouse where I suspect product was up against the walls everywhere. Like all the White Wolf product of the era that was taking the world by storm. And then eventually, I said, I'm a quiet kid from Wisconsin. I need to go back to my hotel. And somebody said, oh yeah, sure, you can get the early hearse. And I'm like, it's 2 a.m. It's the early hearse home. Oh my goodness. Yeah, what a way to meet.
Yeah, there was. I remember specifically it was you, me, Taylor Woodruff, Dion Finishicaro, a bunch of other people, and I don't remember all. Look, I remember the purse was packed.
Yeah,
John Bridges was driving.
John Bridges was there. Maybe Andrew.
I think Andrew Greenberg was in the car.
Greenberg might have been in there. I'm not 100%. It's been 20 or 30
It was
years.
over 30 years, the 1993, which is frightening, isn't it? But we had joked at one point. We told John, we're like, man, you better drive careful, because if you crash, you're going to wipe out half the gaming industry.
Yeah, no, the parties were great. Dragon Con has always been a party convention, and White Wolf, even at that time, had a reputation as the bad boys of gaming, right?
Yeah.
Which was maybe a little deserved, but people in Wisconsin were a little jealous, right? Like, we looked at the games you were doing. Lester Smith actually ran a Werewolf the Apocalypse game for all of us, because he's like, nah, I don't want to do vampires, I'll do werewolves. And the whole design and periodicals department at TSR at the time was like, man, we work on Dungeons and Dragons all day. Why don't we rave as, let's be werewolves.
Let's be werewolves.
And it was a nice way to let go and poke at someone else's mechanics and say, I don't know about this thing over here, but that's what it says. So it was a way to maintain our connection to other parts of the hobby, because you play your own stuff all day, you get tired of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to explain at one point after my original roommates, Brian and Kathy, had left. I moved in very briefly with someone who was a White Wolf fan. That was a mistake. But he would try and get me to join him and his friends gaming, and I'm like, no, this is my job. I do this all day. Not gaming, obviously, but making these things. So when I come home, I don't want anything to do with them.
Right? The best we could manage was we played a lot of Cthulhu and a bunch of White Wolf, and once in a while, sort of one-off games of Paranoia or other fairly humorous stuff. But there were board games, there were bad movie nights, there was Hong Kong cinema. Oh gosh, there was something called Hong Kong Action Theater, which we got into for a while there. And lunch hours were for let's play test the thing, right? Let's tear apart the thing that we've got. Let's look at the proofs one more time, because it was work, and we had deadlines, and we knew if it didn't ship, Jim Ward would come after us, or the late Kim Mohan would come after me for a late magazine. So yeah, the professional side and the creative side, they've always been. See, I have this image about White Wolf in the 90s that you guys were, guys and gals, everybody at White Wolf was way more relaxed about deadlines and getting stuff done. And then I look at the product and I'm like, no, they weren't that relaxed. They were working their butts off from this stuff. And the diss from Wisconsin was, they owe Anne Rice some royalty checks. But that was about it. The creativity that came out of that studio for a period of, 10, 12, 15 years before things got weird and bought out.
Yeah, it was more like 5. We were bought out less than 10 years after a little less than 15 years after the company was formed. Yeah, it was quite a ride, but really the classic era of White Wolf, and I know I'm obviously prejudiced, but I think the classic era of White Wolf kind of starts wrapping up around 98, 99, because we were burning out.
Yeah,
we were burning out. Our freelancers were burning out. Our fans were burning out. Money was terrible because of the crash. The industry crash in 96, 97. We went from straight up to straight down money wise. And the last few years that I was with the company, we were hanging on by our fingernails because the whole industry took it. Y'all.
Right? No, my story that I've told a couple of times is I asked my boss, so here I am, I'm editor of Dragon Magazine. What do I got to do to get a raise? And, how do I get a publisher title? And where do I go from here in 5 years? And he said, oh yeah, no, that, you're not getting a raise, and don't plan on much. Like, the company's struggling. And I said, I'm struggling how much? And to his credit, Brian Thompson, the publisher of the periodicals group at the time, said something like, well, if you have another opportunity, maybe you look at it. Like, it was about as close to don't count on the company being here in 5 years as you're ever going to get from your boss. And I left. I went to Wizards a year before D&D was bought up. Good. So I was the one who went to Seattle 12 months early. And a year later, everybody asked me, so it's different than Wisconsin. Are you happy you moved? Like, should we take the buyout offer and move? The move for White Wolf was very different. The buyout was, well, do you want to talk about that? I mean, that was sort of the end of an era thing.
I was long gone by that point.
Yeah.
I left. I left the staff in 1998, but I continued to freelance for them until late 1999, 2000, and then just some stuff really got up my back, and I just said I can't do this anymore, and I went and formed my own company. And
that's a whole nother era. Hey, I know
that's a whole other era. Yeah.
I thought to myself, I've been publishing magazines, and I'm sure that publishing game books is the same thing, but a little more.
So how did you get your own company? I know about Kobold, but I haven't heard the story behind Kobold.
Well, the story behind Kobold is I had a day job at Microsoft and I got bored, right? Like, I wanted to be able to buy a house in the Seattle market, which is why I took a job at Microsoft doing really interesting work, but like, I missed gaming from the word go. Oh, see, you got to have your familiar in here.
This is Hex.
Hey, Hex. And it was just going to be a sideline, right? Like, I was just going to write a few things. Blogging was big around 2005, 2006, this would have been. So I did a little blogging on LiveJournal and talked about game design and talked about, high fantasy and making an adventure and where to start as a writer and sort of basic topics, game design 101. And I said, hey, I'll put out one of these adventures for fans if you guys help me raise some money to pay an artist for a cover, because I refuse to take a free cover. But, I want to raise $50, $100. 20 years ago, you could maybe get something like a piece of art for $100. I put a tip jar on my blog and went to sleep. And I woke up in the morning and it was like $28 in there. And I'm like, holy cats. Do I have to declare I'm a sole proprietor? Right? Like, that was the start. And what it turned into was a fan-powered crowdfunding effort without Kickstarter, right? It was just PayPal tip jar for the first 2 or 3 years until my accountant came to me and said, is this a business? I'm like, I don't think so. I'm losing money. I'm having fun. It's like, okay, if it's a hobby, that's fine. I can declare this as hobby income. But if it is a business, you're going to have to get like a separate account and incorporate and be a business person. And that's when I first took it seriously, because I said, I'm going to make print products. I'm going to ship them to people. They're going to be illustrated and laid out. And then there's a whole story about how Paizo of Pathfinder fame helped me figure out what distribution meant and how to get from digital. Like, I would never have made the jump from digital to print if it wasn't for some of the great people at Paizo, like Eric Mona or James Jacobs and Jason Bullman. So they shared some of their knowledge about, well, here's how you get a book into a hobby store.
That's the hard part. That's before drive-through RPG. So
yeah, pretty soon after. Yeah, right. Like, there's still this part of the industry that's baling wire and bubble gum, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You put something up on itch.io and you hope somebody wants it, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was the start of the business side. If I'd been a little smarter, I would have taken the crowdfunding model and turned it into a software platform and become something like Kickstarter. But I wasn't quite that smart about business at the time. I just wanted to self-publish And then I realized I couldn't write fast enough to meet demand.
Yeah, that is one of the really that's one of the hard parts.
Right? Like I had to trust other people to write stuff that I would publish. It's like, wait a minute. This is supposed to be a vanity press. That lasted about a 2-year span, right? And then I'm like, what if I got Nicholas Logue to write something? And he knocked it out of the park. So yeah, actually collaboration was a big part of the early days for me. And I'm very curious what it was like in the White Wolf days in terms of collaboration and design and like who got to make what decisions.
Well, fortunately, because it started with Stu and Steve creating the magazine, publishing the magazine, literally in their parents' basement in the mid '80s. And when they got together with Mark and I think it was Mark, Lisa, Nicole, Travis,
Jonathan Tweet,
and Jonathan. Yeah, well, Jonathan opted out.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, he didn't. He wasn't involved with White Wolf except in marginally, and definitely not involved by the time he was with Wizards. By the time I got involved with them, but there was this.
But his fingerprints are all over the Ars Magica stuff, right? Like so, his influence.
Yeah. Well, having worked with Mark, and I don't want to trash on Mark, but having worked with Mark, anything with Mark's name in the byline has the fingerprints of the people who actually wrote it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just went there. Sorry,
Mark. But yeah, it's tough, right? Because sometimes you see yourself as a creative, and at some point I realized that I had stopped writing and I had become the business guy behind Kobold Press, right? And I put my name on products where there's actual words of mine in it, but sometimes there's none of it. And I have had Kobold Press products in the last 3 or 4 years where it's like, my contribution was finding the money, finding the audience, maybe writing some art briefs and providing some guidance, but I didn't sit down and grind out a design for it, and I can't take credit for it, but it's still coming from something I built, so I can still be very proud.
Yes, and yes, you can, because the Kobold stuff is excellent. Really,
well, thank you. Yeah, we sweated out the same way you could tell the 90s White Wolf stuff was sweated out, right? Like you could see there was love in it and that people cared. And it doesn't surprise me when you say we kind of burned out, right? And that was part of the reason for the acquisition. I don't think TSR burnt out. TSR had a string of disastrous business decisions that led to bankruptcy. The people were still eager.
Yeah, we had our share of disastrous business decisions too, and I don't want to bash on that either. It's definitely part of the industry. But no, we had an insane, literally insane work ethic there the first few years. My first year at the company, I don't think I left the studio before 10 p.m. and it was usually later than that. Because when I first got there, pretty much everything at White Wolf the first few years was was hanging on by our fingernails to a rocket. Essentially, everyone, even the people who were experienced at doing things at a much slower pace. But Vampire turned out to be so huge, that basically the rocket was lit. We all grabbed on and tried not to fall off and tried not to explode. And
successfully for a long ride.
And it was, I gotta say, it was fun. It was exhausting. It was toxic as hell as a work environment, but it was also a lot of fun. And it was when the fun started to leave is when people started to leave. And you can really see the decline in the books. I think, again, I'm prejudiced, and they definitely did put out some really, really good stuff after I left. I think that Changeling the Lost, rather, which I worked on Changeling the Dreaming. I think Changeling the Lost is one of the best things the company even thought about publishing. I got hold of a copy of that one a few years after leaving. I was just like, holy shit, this is amazing.
It's nice to see that, like, you can probably tell where who was involved and how some of the decisions got made. And like, the view from inside the company at your own products or at the
Yeah.
products after you leave. Like I look at Wizards of the Coast product now and I'm like, huh, interesting. Or darn, I wish I'd done that. But it's clearly, 3 generations since I left Wizards in gaming terms. So it's like, yeah, I'm not in touch with their, processes or lore building or who's the new hot young gun that, okay, no, I take it back. They just hired 2 people who have worked for Kobold Press. They just hired James Hake and Sean Merwin away from Ghostfire onto the staff at Wizards. And I'm like, well, I do know those guys because they wrote some great stuff for Kobold Press when they were earlier in their career, right? A different stage. And they're both still turning in good work. And they're probably, the problem is people go into a games company, they think it's going to be a multi-decade career, right? And it's usually a golden age, right? Like you're there for 5 years, maybe you're there for 8 years. I think about people who hang around for a decade or 2. They're usually not the coal-faced designers or the like grinded out editors. They think there's a life cycle there or there's a limit.
Yeah. I don't know how Steve Jackson is even sentient anymore. I mean, that dude's been in
hired good
since
help
the beginning.
But yeah,
this is true. He's also one of the few people I've met in the industry who is actually almost equally good at both business and creative. We've definitely, he and I have both gotten along and had our disagreements, but I respect the hell out of the guy because, first of all, he's survived what's going on 6 decades in this career.
Right. Like that stuff started in the late 70s, early 80s,
mid 70s.
Wow.
I was seeing stuff.
Still have Steve Jackson games like micro game Car Wars done
Car
with
Wars.
chits. Right, like the primitive components. So I moved recently and I was going through boxes and I'm just like, wow, I still have this thing from 1981. Cool. A and B, damn, what a piece of junk by today's standards. Right? Like we have such lush art and higher component values and better printing process and binding and like the physical objects that go into the role-playing and board games.
Yeah,
man, they're a world away from 40 years ago.
Yeah, I probably can't see it because of the camera angle, but I've got some old hero game stuff. I got a lot of old hero game stuff back then. That was Champions was my jam. Bill and John Bridges turned me on to Champions in 1983, and that was just like that was almost all I would play between 1983 and about 1994 was Hero System. And so I have a bunch of the old stuff, and it is at a totally different level. And again, the enthusiasm and the love is definitely there too. Even the production values are very different.
Well, printing in black and white was standard.
Yeah.
And I can tell the point at Kobold Press where we stopped printing in black and white, and it basically lines up with the arrival of Kickstarter and a different funding model with more direct sales and money for color art and color printing. Right? Like that. It was just such a change. And I love the color. And don't get me wrong, I have a soft, nostalgic spot for black and white, OSR, everything. But it's nostalgia. I don't know. I see the indie games that go hard after black and white. And I'm like, it looked great in 1995.
Yeah, some of them I like the monotone, or not not necessarily monochrome, but the ones with just a few hints of color. One of my absolute favorite games visually is Bluebeard's Bride, which is black and white with tones and occasional accents, usually of gold.
Yeah,
and that's just phenomenal.
If you're a visual graphic design genius, you can make a small palette work. Incredibly. I've seen it and I love it. I mean, I used to collect the black and white indie comics in the 90s, right? And who was that artist who was all over Tim Bradstreet. Right? I'm conjuring names from the distant mist. I don't know what Mr. Bradstreet's doing if he's still around.
I'll look it up.
He's doing comics.
Yeah, he's doing comics.
He does comic covers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ever done an interior. He did. I'm not sure if it was the whole run, but when Garth Ennis was doing his second run on Punisher, I think Bradstreet did all of the covers for that one, or almost all of them.
Oh, fantastic!
There was one by Richard Corbin, but most of them were Bradstreet.
Yeah, I mean, artists define a period, and for me, Bradstreet kind of, I guess I should look up his Punisher run and his new stuff, but define part of the look of White Wolf, just like, I don't know, Jeff Easley or Keith Parkinson defines a certain era of Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Yeah, that would be Rich Thomas. Rich was, and he's one of the other people who Rich was with Dragon Magazine before not Dragon Magazine, rather White Wolf Magazine.
White Wolf Magazine.
Yeah, and he's when White Wolf and when White Wolf and Lion Rampant merged, Rich was part of the White Wolf team there, and his sense of graphic design and his sense of finding new talent, and finding a look that wasn't done to death was and remains phenomenal. And Rich has also kept the White Wolf thing going through Onyx Path Publishing. World of Darkness would probably be dead at this point. Would have been dead for about at least a decade if it hadn't been for Rich, because Onyx Path, because CCP had discontinued the publishing end. They felt that it wasn't it wasn't producing the results that they wanted. They kept working on a White Wolf Online, and obviously that wasn't going anywhere. So they basically fired the entire publishing staff, which included Rich, who had been with White Wolf for literally as long as there had been a White Wolf.
Wow.
And there were several books that were already in progress at that point, most notably Werewolf 20th Anniversary. And he said, this is shortly after Kickstarter, because I think this is 2011, maybe.
Sure.
It's 2010 or 2011, where he says, can I crowdfund, use this new platform to crowdfund so I can finish, just get this book out there for the fans. And the response was huge. Yeah. And he said, to CCP, he's like, can we finish these other books? And they're like, yeah, sure. Just give us 10%, whatever. And so he started publishing the others, and those started crowdfunding huge numbers. And I had worked on Werewolf 20. And when that started happening, I said, well, if you're going to do Mage 20, give me a call.
Yeah.
And he did. And that's when we started working on that in 2012. And what Rich said, and this is something that not only was just wonderful in terms of a working relationship, but it goes back to those early days. He said, I want to get the magic back.
Yeah.
As he said, back those early days, that just insane enthusiasm that we had, where we would, again, we'd be in the office 12, 14, 16. I spent more than one whole night, several of us would sleep at the office sometimes.
Sounds familiar.
And part of it was because the production schedule was insane. We had, in order to both keep the lights on and keep the and keep demand going, because as a lot of people, I have a lot of discussions with people about this who are newer fans, or weren't around back in the 80s or 90s. This stuff was completely disposable as far as the retailers and distributors were concerned. Role-playing games were like comics. You didn't read a 20-year-old role-playing game because there wasn't a 20-year-old role-playing game at that point.
Well, it was weird. The comics at the time were turning into collectibles at a furious pace, and there were variant covers and special treatments. But D&D and Vampire and sort of every RPG was, sure, whatever, we play that module, we don't maybe throw it away, but we don't treat it with any more respect than any other sort of magazine or comic of the period. But 20 years, right? Like, I gotta say, you said 20, and I had to realize Kobold Press will be 20 years old in March.
Congratulations.
And I'm like, how did we make it? what happened, because it's such a long period in a business cycle where a lot of companies are founded, they go to Gen Con once, they go to Gen Con twice, and then they're never heard from again.
Yeah.
Right? Like
my company.
well, games in general, right? Like the big hits everyone remembers, but there's this undercurrent of people taking a shot at it and not having any longevity. So it interests me to see things like, Mage 20, Werewolf 20. Frankly, Midgard's not that old. Midgard's only 13, but Kobold Press 20, yeah, I'm gonna have to, write a history or do a YouTube about it, and we'll see how much I can remember.
Yeah, there's definitely, it gets to be a lot to remember when you're doing this for so long.
Right. Well, you see this in the wikis and the fans who sort of put together sites that are about the lore or about the history, and Wikipedia's done a good job of sort of memorializing some of this. Ben, I think you've had something to do with the historical memory of the hobby, right? Like, we have a history now. It's been 50 years of D&D. It's been, 50 years of Call of Cthulhu at this point. We're losing some founders, obviously, and have been for a while, but there's generations in it, and I'm always fascinated both by what the old guys and gals know and are willing to share, and what the new kids think they've invented. I'm like, no, I don't think that's new. Solo games and journaling games is my latest. Like, yeah, they're not that different, but I guess if you call it journaling, it's different.
Yeah, I love that. Aaron Alston's ghost is hovering over the journaling games, going, so about blue booking.
Yeah, right. Like, and the approach was a little different, and the times were different, but they're like, this is a similar thing, and it bugs me that there is very little history of the hobby, and it's pop culture generally. You see this in, like, there are obsessive fans of video games and comics and film, but a lot of it is also disposable, right? Like, at some point, if we don't pull it together and say, hey, it's the 20th anniversary edition, and let's also talk about what's been going on for the last 20 years, we lose it if we don't interview those people.
Yeah,
can I interject one moment to say, Aaron Alston did the Rules Cyclopedia, which some would argue is the greatest single volume of D&D ever made, because it had, treasure,
everything,
monsters, all in one volume. But I have no idea what blue booking is.
Strike Force. It was a Champions source book called Strike Force, which I know I'm prejudiced in this regard, but I consider one of the most influential RPG books ever written, because he was the one to, more than anyone else at the time, to approach and present role-playing games as genre, as interactive genre storytelling, which I mean is a dud now, but this was 1985, I think, and the majority of people, even in even at the more experimental ends, the majority of people outside of Chaosium, and even many of the ones in Chaosium, were still presenting it as, go adventure into place, confront thing, kill thing, get thing, go up level. And Aaron Alston was presenting it as sagas of storytelling. He was in particularly in Strike Force and the Lands of Mystery, which was a supplement for Justice Incorporated, Champions pulp era source book, and he was presenting it as character types. He's the one to first start talking about different types of players and the way that the different players had different desires, and how as a GM you could this is how you please this kind of player, this is how you please this kind of player, this is how you deal with this kind of problem, this is how you incorporate genre tropes into
your design.
And he was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I won't argue that at all. Mr. Alston had he was miles ahead. And it's not that this stuff wasn't being thought of at some level in the more meat and potatoes D&D stuff, right? Like, it's not that no one there knew what, Campbell talked about or what storytelling was. And I, as a junior editor at Dungeon Magazine, my boss, Barbara Young, was like, so what's his story here? She wasn't a big gamer, but she wanted to be able to write a slug line or a lead for any article in Dungeon Magazine that would tell you, this is the story of a kidnapped princess who needs to be, like, at some level, she didn't care what level it was for. She cared what the heroes were supposed to do and she taught me good habits. I mean, I don't know where Barbara Young is now. I think she's retired, but she's her instincts were, you can bring readers to your games if they're told you're the heroes and here's your story.
Yeah.
That's the core promise, even at the most baseline farm boy with a sword genre trope. And White Wolf took it a lot further, right? And sometimes to outrageous levels of, well, it's a storytelling game and mechanics are for losers or whatever, right? Like, that's there was a point there in the White Wolf arc where I'm like, guys, did you playtest this? Anybody, like, the lore was so good, the characters were so good, and occasionally one of the rules monkeys in Lake Geneva would say, this doesn't work.
No, there's I'll say that the first editions, none of them were play tested. I mean, most of it's infamous element of Mage lore is that Mage first edition was essentially rewritten in about 3 weeks.
Oh wow.
Because what Stuart and Steve initially came out with was a brilliant idea wrapped around basically no mechanics, and it wasn't practical. There was a lot of great concept, but it didn't hold together. And Rob Hatch, who is another one of the unsung White Wolf mainstays, Rob Hatch, took it to Steve and he said, this doesn't work. We can't publish this. So they basically this is before I got involved. I was freelancing for the company at that point, but I wasn't part of the staff. But they had a huddle, full company, which at that point I think was about 12, 13 people.
Mm-hmm.
They said, okay, what do you all think? And they're like, yeah, it doesn't. So essentially, Steve and Stuart, and Stuart was absolutely phenomenal at swallowing his ego and going, okay, what do we need to do to make this happen? You see so little of that. Stuart and I got along very well for the most part, but a big part of that is I respect the hell out of him. I respected him the hell out of him, because at a time when it would have been really easy for him to go, no, it's mine, we have to do it this way. He's like, you're right, it doesn't work. Okay, let's figure out what does. And they took it and rewrote it in a few weeks.
I think that's the story of a lot of, that's a particularly great story because it's got a happy ending of rewriting. I mean, it fulfilled most of its promise, right? And I think people have a love for Mage because it did have these big ideas and the mechanics mostly held up, right? But it's sort of what I learned in a different way. In the early days of Kobold Press, it was the fan base was also the playtest base. I had no one to do playtesting with in-house because it was me and like one editor or me and one art director. Like, we can't do this. So we had bulletin boards and we had groups that we would bribe basically by saying, we'll print your name in the credits if you playtest this adventure, if you playtest this new class mechanic. And they did, and it became a habit for the company that anything that we thought had the slightest chance of needing an extra set of eyes beyond an editor or a developer would go out to the playtesters. And we spent, all right, so Ben McFarland is the great unsung hero of this, a designer for Kobold Press in the early Pathfinder days, but also the playtest coordinator for years. He ran hundreds and hundreds of playtesters through our stuff. And the monster books that people remember and that have been through, Tome of Beasts, my God, what is it? 5 printings, 3 editions. I don't know. It just keeps going. been in print for 10 years because, well, it all got play tested. And it wasn't perfect, but man, you put those extra hours in, that extra sweat. And the people who you were talking about, player types, the ones who care about the tactical combat part of the game, they all appreciated it, and they figured out pretty quickly that, okay, it's not perfect, but it's better than someone has spent time honing it.
Yeah, we were the first few years of White Wolf, we were rewriting the systems literally almost every book. And part of that was because when they first came up with when they first came up with the idea of doing the 5 different lines, Mark had the idea of each one of them having a different rule system. Vampire would have rules focused on being being vampires, and werewolf would have a different rule system, and ghost would have a different rule system, and wizard would have a different rule system, and fairy would have a different rule system. And obviously that was completely unworkable.
Yes.
So there was still some hashing out being done when the first editions of Vampire and Werewolf. And this is one of the places, talking about people swallowing their egos, where Mark, Steve, and Stuart had the brilliant idea, and this is, I think, probably the single best reason that White Wolf survived and became as popular as we did, was because they had the idea of, rather than having a bunch of different people writing a bunch of different books, that one person would be the line developer, and that once the line was handed off to that line developer, that person, for better and worse, was going to be the arbiter of whatever books were done, who did them, who worked on them. Rich was still in charge of the art, but Rich would work with each of the line developers, and we would create a distinct identity for each line. And each of us had a different approach. But the fact that, and this is a little bit of lore here in a minute, but the fact that Bill, Andrew, and I were all friends and had been friends since college helped us go, okay, we're all on the same page here. I know what Mark said, but let's make sure that all of these lines fit together. Let's revise the rules so that people can cross play, rather than,
because people wanted that almost immediately, right?
Exactly.
Like, vampire versus werewolf. Well, where do the Fae fit in here? One of the first events, one of the first LARPs I went to in the Seattle scene was it was it a vampire event or was it a changeling event? I forget how it was billed, but it was basically White Wolf at the aquarium, and everyone showed up.
Oh, that must have been cool.
And we had this dome of fish over us, right? There's an underwater section, there's the seals, there's the jellyfish tank, and you got to sit in dark corners plotting in the manner of every LARP ever. And at the same time, it was somewhat fey and magical because, well, there was bubbling tanks all over. And everybody had their favorite White Wolf property, right? Like, somebody wanted to be the vampire, somebody wanted to be the werewolf, and it was 60 or 70 players, including people who are sort of legends of the vampire scene, like Jason Carl, right, or others who just made live action their thing. And that was one of those moments where I'm like, the gaming is better here than it was back home in Wisconsin. We don't have an aquarium like this back there.
Yeah, and the Wizards folks really got into it too, especially back when Wade and Jillian,
Scott Hungerford, Pete Venters. There was a goth scene in Seattle in the 90s that was enormous, and I didn't realize how good it was at the time. Only in hindsight do I go, that was really cool.
Yeah, we had a good one in Atlanta too for similar reasons. But the bit of lore, and I'll just drop this in there. But the bit of lore was that the VCU Games Masters, which formed in 1982 with Andrew Greenberg, Dan Greenberg, Sam Shirley, Mike, I'm blanking on Mike Dawson, a few other people. When they got together to game, they were also esoteric weirdos, and so they started talking about gaming as philosophy. And so by the time the next year, when Bill Bridges, John Bridges, myself joined Games Masters, there was this kind of arcane philosophy going on around the gaming and involved with the gaming, and that really rubbed off on us. And we were also a bunch of political malcontents and occultist weirdos and punkers and stuff like that. And so we're bringing all of this stuff to the games. So this is 1983, 84, 85. And at that point, Hero Games and Chaosium Games were the ones that reflected, and Paranoia reflected most accurately what we were into and what we were doing. And so when Andrew got involved, Dan's younger brother Andrew got involved with I don't know if it was White Wolf magazine or Lion Rampant. That would be an Andrew question. But in any case, when he got involved with White Wolf, he called Bill, and Bill called me, and we called Sam and Abbott and Chris Howard and various other people.
It was harder before the connection of bulletin board, social media. The internet existed, but it wasn't used for networking in the same way. Oh, it did. I was a moderator briefly for an AOL forum at that time, a company AOL forum. But yeah, it wasn't used to bring in potential creatives or to make those kind of connections. That was all, who did you know? Whose art did you see at the art show? Whose thing did you read in the magazine that made you go, wow, who's this Aaron Alston guy? He seems to know how to write.
Who'd you meet at the conventions?
Yeah, you'd meet at the conventions.
And the Hearst.
So, I mean, I still go to conventions because I like meeting people once a year, but no, I don't need it professionally the way you did before those connections were made more online.
Yeah, I definitely. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking that some of that is still the case. People who were in my Rolodex from Dragon Magazine or from Kobold Quarterly Magazine. Frankly, people from Dragon Magazine wound up in Kobold Quarterly Magazine when I had the clever idea of founding a magazine at the dawn of the internet, at the dawn of fandom taking over every magazine. Those people, they roll forward and they say, oh, well, yeah, I've done X, Y, and Z, and I can also do the next thing. And it's been fascinating to me to see careers of people that you've mentioned, like Jonathan Tweet, right, who was right there in Lion Rampant, but took a pass on White Wolf to go to Wizards, and as game after game after game brought something interesting, but not always for the same publisher.
Yeah.
So creative careers independent of who the business is behind them is something I follow more than I should these days. Well, it's like novelists, right? Whose game do you want to play? Whose novel do you want to read? If you like Charles Stross, you're going to like the next Laundry novel, no matter whether it's published by A or B. So what I appreciate about tabletop games is that the credits were there from the beginning.
Yes.
Board games didn't do this, right? You look at old board games and you might see a credit for who designed it, but probably not. You just see a copyright statement from Hasbro or Mattel. So we're pretty good about it, acknowledging our weirdos because they insist on it. And
one of the few. Oh, sorry,
yeah, one of the few perks, right?
It's not the money. It's not the money.
The money got better over time. I swear, after Kickstarter, people like rates went up, better art came in, better production quality. I talk about that as a watershed, but historically, like, it was not quite a fire hose of money, but it was far more than tabletop games were used to.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that we have Kickstarter and that we have drive-through RPG and so forth. That the options for publishing and for compensation and for things staying, for things staying in print and being globally available are much, much greater than they were back in the 80s and 90s. Even
I'm not sure globally available is a plus. I know people in
Yeah.
Europe or Australia are going to boo and hiss, but it's a huge pain in the neck to do global distribution. And Kickstarter, it's expected, but the sheer amount of logistical work, and it's boring work, right? It's the unsung heroes who get the customs forms filled out and all the components at the same warehouse at the same time. But good God, if I could just have a unified market in North America, I'd be so happy.
Yeah. Well, it's digital. I mean, with the company that my wife and I have now, Quiet Thunder, we won't be doing hard copy distribution overseas anymore because too many copies go missing.
Yeah.
The last hard copy book that we had a Kickstarter for, about 10 copies out of a few hundred never made it to their destination, so we had to replace those. And especially with the postage rates being what they are now, international postage is obscenely expensive. So you pay we had a package going to Germany that didn't arrive. It was $70 in postage and about $100 worth of products. It just disappeared. So we had to do that again. And
it's one of the most common complaints we get from customers is, why is postage so expensive? And the answer is, well, it's transcontinental shipment of several pounds of, heavy, glossy paper. And airmail letters used to cost the earth, and stuff used to get shipped by boat, and now it's, I'm very happy when somebody picks up digital versions of Kobold Press products, because I know they're still getting the same experience. They don't have customs and postage to worry about. But there are people who will say, hey, I live in South Korea and I'm willing to pay $90 to ship a $50 book from the States. So it's bizarre, but you want your book. Some people still want the thing. And Kobold Press does have a Kickstarter. I'd probably get hammered if I don't mention that we're doing one. And it's kind of it's in your wheelhouse, though. It's a gothic horror thing called Night Hunters and Night Terrors, and it's all about the creepy, crawly side of fantasy. So I'm in. It's the vampire and the Van Helsing figure on the cover may give you some idea of where it's at mood-wise, right? It's more Victorian horror than it is modern horror. But the two main designers on it, Celeste Konowich and Sarah Madsen, are just amazing, and they both have a deep love of the horror genre and talk about why and how you can introduce that into a more traditional D&D or Tales of the Valiant campaign. So after years and years of saying no, Kobold Press is fantasy, full stop, we're not doing horror, I finally broke down because it was just too irresistible. So
is the campaign live? When does it go live?
It is live. It went live, I don't know. It went live a week or two ago. I don't know. Search Night Hunters on Kickstarter. You'll find it.
I'll put a link in here. There's a tarot deck.
Yeah, there is a tarot deck. Right? And I'm pretty sure the tarot deck, because I'm the one who pushed for it, was inspired either by the Vertigo Tarot or by some White Wolf Tarot or both.
The Mage Tarot.
The Mage Tarot.
Thank you. And I was like, why has Kobold Press never done a tarot deck? Other cooler companies
pain in the ass.
Well, I discovered that along the way.
They are a pain in the ass.
The artist has been amazing. But they're hard. And now, it's a beautiful box with a magnetic closure, but tariffs, but this, but that. Anyway, we're doing it. The tarot deck is fun.
And Satyros, what would you suggest that people in the audience go and purchase from you?
Oh, okay. Well, my collection of short fiction, Breaking the Devil's Bread, just came out a few months ago from Nightmare Press. I've also got my urban fantasy novel Red Shoes, which is available in hardcover, trade paperback, digital and audiobook editions.
Ooh, audio, nice.
Yeah. Oh man, the Ivy Tower Blair did a marvelous job with it, and it's got some transitional music here and there from S.J. Tucker, who was one of the inspirations for the book. Actually, our friend S.J. Suge. I've also got a collection of another collection of short fiction called Valhalla with a Twist of Leith. On the gaming front, I did Mage 20 for about 12 years, but I've stopped doing that now. But we do have like Mage Made Easy, which is on the Storyteller's Vault. Several other books there. I'm not going to burn a whole lot of time talking about that. Also, Power Chords, Music, Magic, and Urban Fantasy, which is from our company, Quiet Thunder, and I've got other
stack.
I've been working on a project for a while with Pinnacle called RuneGate Shattered Paradise. That one's almost ready to go into editing. Finally, that's a 5e project. I also worked on a project we're talking about long time pros with Alan Varney and Fisky. They have a company, and they launched a campaign, but there was some problem, and they're going to be relaunching it again this year. But that project was called Man's Magnificent, and I am unfortunately blanking on the name of their company off the top of my head. But yeah, Alan and Beth formed a company. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm keeping busy.
Sounds like it. My goodness. Yeah, that's great. The thing about weirdos and creatives is it's hard to shut us up, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm mostly on the business side these days, but I just had a meeting recently with Thomas, the editorial director, and I was like, yeah, this project, I want these chapters. And he's like, fine, great. I don't have to find a freelancer for that section. I'm like, no, this is my jam. And I can't talk about it. It's unannounced, but I'm like, I'm going to find the time. I'm going to, I have 20,000 words to say here, and it's just a topic I love. So I'm getting ready to spend a chunk of the summer just burning through it and seeing what I can do. Yeah, no, it's nice because you spend a lot of time looking at proofs and printer quotes and fulfillment and thinking about marketing on the business side. Those are all important. But I started in the editing and design side, and it's never quite gone away. I've never been cured.
Well, I'm glad you're going to get back into or connect more with the creative end, because it's so easy to get just buried underneath all the business concerns.
Oh yeah, right. You started your company and you thought, I'm going to have all this time to do exactly what
So
licensing, taxes.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Ben?
Oh, well, thank you for asking that excellent question.
Yes.
Most germanely, I owe a book to St. Martin's Press by November. It is a little bit terrifying because it's tentatively called Critical Hit: How Tabletop Role-Playing Games Took Over the 21st Century.
Nice.
I like it already.
Thank you. I have 44,000 words written. I owe 100, and I have a lot of sources, a lot of interviews, and that is very stressful. Because again, I feel like because what I'm writing has to be true, I can't just sit down and like plug out 1,000 words a day, and I feel like I've been working on my design of 5e chapter for 2 weeks now, and I think I have like 200 words written, so that element of things is very stressful. But when someone is like, hey, here are 20 documents from the early days of 5e, including a 5-page prospectus from Monty Cook on what he would have done if he could have done 5e, you're like, well, I guess I got to read this all and really grok it before I can just make this up. So that is scary and thrilling and exciting and fun. I also have this podcast. If you've never listened to this before, I have conversations like this, but probably not as good, every week. We have a Patreon. On it, I discuss fairly frequently the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide with Dr. Scott Bruner. We're very slowly reading it aloud. We've been doing it for about 6 years, and we're on page 42. And
taking your time. No rush.
We're chewing it over.
Yeah.
And we also have special episodes like Dr. Scott and I interviewing Zeb Cook in the Hugh Hefner suite in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, at GaryCon, and similar fun stuff like that. Sandy Peterson talking to Ken Hyde about Call of Cthulhu.
Oh.
So for a mere $3 a month, for less than the price of a Seattle cup of coffee, you can support this fine show. But
you should.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been great. I would love to have you two on again sometime. This is a ton of fun to listen to.
Sure, we love chewing over the old days. Thanks for giving us the opportunity.
Yes, thank you, and thank you also, Ben, for with the work that you and Shannon and other people are doing to go into and to share the history and explore the history of this medium, because like Wolfgang was saying earlier, this was just considered a disposable weird shit, and you all are giving it the historical background and telling the stories, even the ugly ones, and I appreciate that.
As a Polish Catholic, I'm embarrassed. But thank you for your kind words.
Keep doing the good stuff. No, I've had a great time here, and I love talking the old days, the new days, and how we got from one to the other. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.